All right, also taking place on December 31st and being presented by the network TBS in Japan, not the Turner broadcasting station in the United States, but TBS in Japan is going to be it's actually I think TBS stands for Tokyo Broadcasting Service off the top of my head, but that's for something else. There's going to be two world title fights, the WBA World Flyweight Championship between Kazuto Ioka and Ioka-Kaensa, aka Step Kiatnawat, a fighter from Thailand, as well as Jonathan Guzman of the Dominican Republic defending his IBF Super Bantamweight Championship against Japan's own Yukinori Oguni. Two really good fights. I'm going to start off with Guzman versus Oguni, considering the fact that I think, well, for two reasons. Really, I think a lot of people in terms of the international scene that don't necessarily pay as much attention to the lighter weights, unfortunately, will be looking at Guzman very closely and carefully, considering the fact that he's fighting at super bantamweight, a division that tends to get a little bit more shine, a little bit more play in the Western world, and he's going to be fighting against Yukinori Oguni. Oguni's only loss, he's 18-1-1 with 7 knockouts. Jonathan Guzman, of course, has a perfect record, 22-0 with 22 knockouts. Oguni's only loss was actually to the man that Guzman defeated to get this IBF Super Bantamweight title, the vacant title. Guzman defeated Shingo Wake, a fighter who had probably come a little bit into becoming well known by virtue of the fact that originally he was supposed to fight Guillermo Rigondeaux a couple years ago after the Hisashi Amagasa fight. That fight never actually turned out, unfortunately for both of them actually. I mean, Watkins never got his opportunity, and he eventually came across a hungry young contender that managed to kind of take his lunch from him in Jonathan Guzman. It was a pretty tough fight though. I'm sure a lot of you actually saw that fight. Wake gave him hell. Hurt Guzman in a couple instances. Guzman got a little bit over anxious. I think is a little bit too used to being able to just physically manhandle a lot of his opponents. And so his last couple of fights, he's looked like he has a few deficiencies in terms of his technical skill set. We'll see if he's managed to clean any of those up against Oguni. Oguni is probably just a slight step back from where Shingo Wake was. Shingo Wake, of course, managed to knock Oguni out in their fight, but it was a fight where Oguni was very highly competitive against Wake. So this is a slightly softer touch. I guess you might say like a bit of a soft touch to a certain degree for Jonathan Guzman's first defense. Of course, they had a deal with the Japanese promoter who's promoting this fight, Ioka Promotions, Kazuto Ioka's uncle, Hiroki, former world champion in his own right. And so, they're going back to do repeat business, basically. Jonathan Guzman lit up the crowd, most certainly, in his first fight in Japan, and he's looking to do the same in his second fight. And hopefully, this time, when he gets his purse, when he gets his money, he'll, put it in the bank or something. He doesn't just take all that money cash all the way back to the DR and winds up getting it stolen from him. Very unfortunate incident. You don't want to see that happen to any fighter. So Guzman versus Oguni should be a pretty solid fight. Guzman, up and coming rising fighter at super bantamweight in a division that's starting to to pick up a little bit of steam now. With the recent retirement of Huzumi Hasegawa, as well as Guillermo Rigondeaux still being around there, going to be fighting Moises Flores in a couple of months. You got the rise of Diego Magdaleno with his big win over Nonito Donaire. And then you have the likes of Hugo Ruiz, Julio Ceja, Gavin McDonald, and Ray Vargas all competing for the WBC title at the moment. Neomar Semenyo as well out there with the WBA interim title. Very, very tough spoiler fighter. So Guzman's looking to make his name in the division, looking to make his name just generally speaking in the world of boxing. And I'm assuming that he'll probably be able to get past Oguni. He definitely doesn't look like he's looking past him. He said that he sparred 150 rounds for this fight. He's well prepared, and hopefully he's managed to clean up some of those technical issues that he was having against Wake, because that fight could have gotten very hectic had it gone, a few more rounds. It looked like Guzman was starting to run out of gas a little bit there, in spite of the fact that he managed to hurt Wake repeatedly early. Wake was definitely coming back into that fight in the mid-rounds. So Guzman versus Oguni is most likely going to be taking place first. So that'll probably be on around, I'd imagine sometime between 6 and 7 p.m. Japanese time, which would correspond to probably between, let me think here, about 1 and 2 a.m. Pacific time or 3 and 4 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Um, and then the main event, Kazuto Ioka versus Ioka-Kaensa, aka Stanton Kienawat, will be a bit of an interesting one too. Um, I do think that Ioka isn't necessarily the same fighter that he was at 108 and 105 pounds. At 112 pounds, he isn't quite as devastating, isn't really grinding and ripping through his opponent's body with that body attack that was very patented and very successful for him at 105 and 108 pounds. At 112, he's had a little bit more issues. Of course, his only loss came at 112 pounds to I'm Not Wrong, a guy that was a bit of a big time spoiler the last couple of years before he managed to get knocked out against John Real Casimero in the rematch. But he pretty much controlled that first fight. Otherwise, though, Ioka has done a very good job. Had a tough majority decision win over Juan Carlos Reveco, who he managed to rematch and then defeat by technical knockout in the 11th round in that rematch. But otherwise, he has had a couple of tough fights here and there in recent years at flyweight, more so than what he had faced as a strawweight and as a light flyweight. Even recently against Kevin Lara, 11th round knockout, but a fight that was actually a bit tougher than what was expected. His opponent, Kevin Lara, though, was 18-1-1, a tough young contender looking to upset the apple cart, upset the odds. And, he was definitely giving Ioka a lot of issues early on. It wasn't until later where Ioka's overall stamina, conditioning, and power managed to just get him the grind out win and stopping Lara. Here against Kaensa, he's fighting a pretty precocious young fighter, though. I mean, I said the word precocious in relation to Kosei Tanaka in the fact that he was only 21 years old, won his first world title at age 20, was fighting against undefeated fighters as a teenager still, and knocking him out in his fourth fight. But here in Stamp Kianawat, aka Ioka-Kaensa of Thailand, of Bangkok, Thailand, we have a guy that's 15-0 with 6 knockouts at the age of 18, and he currently holds the interim WBA flyweight, the flyweight title. Almost said light flyweight. He's held it for a little over a year now, after he managed to defeat Gregorio Lebron of the Dominican Republic in a majority decision in their first fight, a fight that I thought LeBron probably should have won. Their second fight, I thought could have gone either way, but Kiatnawat once again managed to get the edge in the decision. I think probably partially owing to the fact that both fights were held in Thailand. Here against Kazuto Ioka, though, he's definitely not going to have that same hometown advantage, home field advantage, and he's going to be fighting against a guy that's very, very well seasoned for a guy that's still only 27, a guy that's 20-1 with 12 knockouts in Ioka, a guy that himself was a bit of a precocious fighter when he won his first world title. I think it was in his 7th fight back in 2011. Where he won the WBC Strawweight Championship and then went on to unify very quickly thereafter and then become eventually a 3-weight titleist as he is right now. Very, very tough opposition for Kaensa. But I do think that the 2 fights with Gregorio Lebron have probably prepared him fairly well for somebody like Ioka. Lebron is a pretty slick guy, a guy with a lot of power of his own, 16-4 with 12 knockouts, so he has a lot of power. But a guy that tends to fight a bit more of that, Mayweather-esque kind of Philly shell, stick and move, try and be very slick and be very spoilery, but also at the same time trying to hurt you really badly with big counter shots. So this fight between him and Ioka will be very interesting. I think Kaensa is, a guy that's still growing. Really, he's only 18, so he probably might not even necessarily be as tall as he's gonna turn out to be when he finally tops out, as a fully grown man and closer to his mid-20s as opposed to still being a teenager as he is right now. But here against Ioka, he's going to be fighting the toughest opponent of his career, the most experienced opponent of his career, but a guy that may not necessarily be as physically demanding of Kaensa as Kaensa could be of Ioka. Ioka tends to be a bit more of a finesse fighter in spite of the fact that he is a very big puncher. Isn't necessarily a guy that really bullies and manhandles you with his overall physicality and strength. So Kaensa may be the guy that's going in there trying to bully Ioka, really trying to push Ioka and see exactly what he has in terms of just physical strength and fortitude, basically. Ioka is a guy that has had some issues, with the flyweights that he's fought in the past. Most notably, as I mentioned before, I'm not Runwang, who was a very, very big flyweight, the guy that eventually missed weight in his rematch with Casimiro by a number of pounds and fought in the Olympics just recently as a lightweight, as a 132 pounder. So just goes to show that Ioka, he can have some issues with a guy that really physically presses him. So it'll be interesting to see if Kaensa tends to do that, as a lot of the fighters from Thailand tend to do. They tend to be very physical, very aggressive, rugged fighters that really push you to the limit in terms of your conditioning and stamina. Guys that are very gritty and will take one to give one. Oftentimes, Kaensa tends to be a little bit more technical than I think a lot of the typical, stereotypical, I guess, Thai fighters tend to be thought of. But he is a very gritty, tough fighter in his own right, and a guy that is almost every bit as tall as Ioka, 5'4.5". Maybe he might even be 5'5" by now. He's still is only 18. He's gonna be 19 in a little in on January 7th actually. So hopefully he'll be able to get a happy birthday present by getting himself the full WBA flyweight title as opposed to just the interim version against Ioka. But Ioka is definitely not going to let that go easy. He's going to be fighting in front of a lot of people in Kyoto, near, very fairly close to his hometown, his home province of Osaka, Japan, and he's looking to remain on top of the world. He's the guy that's been the number one ratings draw in Japan the last few years. Only recently has Naoya Inoue managed to rival his ratings in Japan. That 6 million, 7 million, 8 million viewer fight number that Ioka's managed to build up over the years, largely owing to the fact that he's a bit of a what's the word? I'm losing the word off the top of my head at the moment. A bit of a guy that's carrying on the Ioka name. Of course, his uncle Hiroki Ioka was one of the top light flyweights back in the 90s. A guy that was a world champion in his own right and retired with a very impressive record in his own right. So Kazuto has managed to carry on that family name and carry it on with pride. By and large, has only lost that one fight to Amnao Ronwang. Otherwise, he's a three-weight world champion, a guy that's defeated a number of very tough opponents on the way up. Akira Higashi, Juan Hernandez Navarrete, Juan Carlos Reveco, Felix Alvarado. Just a good overall record for the man, good accomplishments, and he's looking to continue to build upon those accomplishments. He's not trying to rest on his laurels necessarily, and it'll be interesting to see exactly how this fight turns out. I think this is probably one of the more evenly matched fights of the New Year's weekend. Should be an interesting fight. Just Kaensa, in the young, hungry lion, looking to try and take what Ioka's got and become like ostensibly kind of the new Kazuto Ioka, albeit the Thai version. And then Ioka looking to still kind of maintain his stranglehold on the Japanese audience and, to a slightly lesser degree, the international audience in terms of his overall relevance as one of the top flyweights, one of the top lighter weight class division fighters in the planet, pound for pound and otherwise. Ioka's looking to keep his relevance. Kaensa's looking to steal that relevance away. And this is a pretty interesting clash, I think. It might be one of the more even, one of the more interesting fights, maybe one of these fight of the year type fights very late in the year. I'll definitely be interested, and I hope you guys are too. As usual, I'm going to be leaving a link for the stream in the description. So, make sure to tune in around the times that I said. I'll put the times in the description as well, just as a overall reminder. And I mean, this fight, along with the Jonathan Guzman fight, should be very, very interesting to watch. The Guzman fight, slightly lighter touch, really more looking at where I think a lot of us as pundits and fans are looking more at Guzman to see some level of improvement, so that when he fights another fighter at the very world-class level, perhaps another champion for a unification, we'll see how he matches up in that case. And then for Ioka as well, we'll see exactly how he matches up in this new flyweight division, minus a Roman Gonzalez, minus a Juan Francisco Estrada. Will he be the absolute top fighter in the flyweight division now that those two names have left off to super flyweight? It'll be interesting to see. You got Zhou Shiming out there. You got Dani Nietes, who recently made his flyweight debut. You got the likes of Nawapan Pochokchai and Juan Chiritos Hernandez out there. Still, of course, Hernandez is a guy that Ioka managed to defeat before, but who has managed to come back and is in title contention once more. So, Ioka is fairly well ranked at number one, but we'll see if he can maintain that ranking. But that's all I have for this one, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.